I don't think anyone takes a job like this because they want to. You take it because something in your life broke. That's what happened to me. I needed out of the noise, out of the debt, out of the screaming matches with a landlord who gave up pretending to care. So when a listing popped up for an overnight position at a rural distribution hub, isolated, no experience required, steady pay, I didn't ask too many questions. I packed my bag and drove west. The facility was buried in the hills of northern Utah, about a 30-minute drive from the nearest diner and surrounded by nothing but pine, dirt, and fog. I passed through one town on the way in, small enough that it didn't even have a stoplight, and then kept driving until the trees started thinning and a large metal fence came into view. At first, I thought it was a power substation or some kind of military installation, but the place had none of the official signage you'd expect. No logos, no warnings, just a plain gate, a buzzer, and a small blinking red light. That was my welcome. I gave my name into the intercom, waited, and then the gate groaned open. The parking lot was empty except for a single truck and a white SUV with tinted windows. I parked next to the truck. It looked like it hadn't moved in months. Inside, the building was larger than it looked from the road. Long concrete corridors, high ceilings, flickering strip lights that hummed faintly overhead. There was a front desk, but no receptionist. Just a stack of papers in a bin labeled Orientation and a sign taped to the wall that read, "Clock in, room 2B, no signature, no welcome message, no smile." Room 2B was down a hallway that smelled like mold and disinfectant. I followed the directions, my boots echoing against the concrete. The silence was unnatural, not just quiet, but hollow, like the building had forgotten how to make sound. Even my breathing felt muffled. When I finally pushed open the door to 2B, a man in a grey button-up shirt was sitting behind a metal desk, flipping through a thick binder. He didn't look up when I entered, just said, "You're the new night shift?" I nodded. "You read the list?" I hesitated. "The list?" He sighed and pushed a single sheet of paper across the desk toward me. 7 sentences, all typed, all capitalized. The 7 rules of night shift security. I scanned them, trying not to frown. 1. Do not leave the control room between 1:11 and 2:11 a.m. 2. If you hear knocking from the supply hall after midnight, do not answer. 3. If you see someone in a red maintenance vest, do not speak to them. They are not scheduled. 4. If the security cameras go static, wait. Do not adjust them. 5. If you hear your name spoken on the intercom, cover your ears and do not respond. 6. Do not look directly into the mirror above the sink in break room 3. 7. Do not acknowledge the 7th rule. I looked up. Is this a joke? He finally met my eyes. There was nothing joking in his expression. No, he said. It's not. That was my first night. That's how it started. He walked me through the basics, where the control room was, what buttons not to press, how to log incident reports. But he didn't explain the rules, not once. And when I tried to ask, he changed the subject or stared like he hadn't heard me at all. At 10 o'clock p.m., he handed me a badge and a flashlight, then left without a goodbye. Just walked down the hall, pulled the door shut behind him, and left me alone. The control room was at the end of another corridor, past a locked storage door with dents in the steel. I settled in. There were 2 monitors, one showing camera feeds from different wings of the building, and the other displaying a flickering list of system statuses. One red light blinked at the bottom of the screen, marked Zone D. I didn't know what that meant. There was no map, no manual, just me and the rules. At first it was uneventful, quiet, a low hum from the air vents, the occasional flicker on the cameras.
I told myself the rules were there to scare rookies, some dark, humor-hazing ritual, and maybe I would have kept believing that if nothing happened. But at exactly 12:06 a.m., I heard it. Knocking. 4 slow knocks. Muffled. Distant. I sat up listening. It came again. This time louder. I turned to the camera feed, camera 3, supply hallway. The frame showed a long corridor with overhead lights flickering. No movement, no shadows. But I could hear it. Knocking. Loud and deliberate. Like someone was knocking directly on the security monitor. I remembered rule 2. Do not answer the knocking. So I sat there frozen. My fingers gripped the edge of the desk. I kept staring at the screen, waiting for something to show itself. Nothing did. The knocking stopped after the 3rd round. But something else started, a low rhythmic scratching. Not metal on metal, but something softer, like fingers against concrete. I watched the feed until it stopped, maybe 5 minutes later. I almost got up. I wanted to check. I wanted to prove to myself that there was nothing there, that it was the pipes or the old building creaking. But then I saw the time, 1:09 a.m. Rule 1. I stayed in my seat, my pulse racing. I counted the minutes. At exactly 1:11 a.m., the control room lights flickered. Once, twice, then held steady. I stared at the door. A minute passed. Then another. And then I heard something on the intercom. It was faint at first. A crackle. Static. Then my name. Spoken slowly. Softly. Like someone whispering it through grit teeth. I don't know how I had the presence of mind to react, but I did. I clapped my hands over my ears and pressed down, hard. The voice repeated my name. Then again, and again. Each time growing more distorted, less human. I kept pressing until it stopped. When I took my hands off, the room was silent. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on me. The clock on the wall ticked past 2:11 a.m. The lights stabilized. The screen returned to normal. And just like that, everything was quiet again. I didn't sleep when I got home. I didn't eat. I didn't tell anyone. But I went back the next night. Because sometimes survival doesn't look like running. It looks like understanding the rules and praying you never find out what happens when you break them. I went back the next night. I didn't want to. I had every excuse ready. Headache, car trouble, flu. But none of them left my mouth. Because the truth was, even after what I saw, something deeper than fear kept me going back. Something like obligation. Or maybe curiosity with teeth. The kind that doesn't let go once it bites down. The building looked exactly the same, empty, still. But I noticed things now that I didn't before. The way the hallway lights pulsed, like they were syncing with something just beneath the concrete. The strange dents in the steel storage doors that hadn't been there the first night. Or maybe they had, and I just hadn't been ready to notice. The humming from the lights now sounded like whispering when I stood under them too long. I kept telling myself it was just power fluctuations, but I stopped standing under them. The man who trained me was gone. I never saw him again after night 1. No explanation, no shift overlap, just silence, like he'd never existed. When I asked the supervisor during a brief call, she paused too long before answering, then said, "We rotate staff. It's normal." But her voice cracked when she said it, like she knew it wasn't true. By midnight, I was back in the control room, and everything looked stable. No movement on the monitors, no alerts, just the silent weight of the rules hanging over me like a second ceiling. At 12:23 a.m., the first thing happened. Camera 6, Zone D. That camera had always shown static, a blur of grey snow. But now, shapes moved in the static. At first, it looked like shadows twitching behind the noise. Then they started to take shape. A hand,
a shoulder, a face pressed too close to the lens. I leaned forward, trying to make out more detail, when the static jumped, like something inside the camera lunged, and all the screens blinked out for half a second. I remembered Rule 4. If the cameras go static, wait. Do not adjust them. So I sat back. I didn't touch anything. The monitors returned. The faces were gone. The only thing that remained was a red maintenance vest in the hallway of camera 4. Someone was standing just outside the break room. Still, not moving. I stared at the vest, heart racing. Rule 3. If you see someone in a red maintenance vest, do not speak to them. They didn't move toward the camera, didn't turn, just stood there, as if they were waiting to be acknowledged. I turned away from the screen, counted slowly to 10, looked again. They were gone. But when I glanced at the floor in the break room, something new was there. A puddle, dark, thick, too far from the vending machines to be a spill. It shimmered oddly in the camera's grayscale, like oil or blood. The intercom buzzed at exactly 12:50 a.m. I didn't wait for the voice. I shoved my palms against my ears, so hard it hurt. This time it didn't say my name. It laughed. And I swear to God, it sounded like it was coming from inside the walls. When the clock crept toward 1:11 a.m., I stood up. My legs trembled. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been clenching my muscles. The door loomed like a silent dare. I wanted to leave, just walk out, get in my car and drive until I forgot what this place looked like. But I didn't. I stayed. The lights flickered again, like they had before. And then I heard footsteps, not from the hallway outside, from behind me. I turned so fast my chair toppled over. No one was there, but the sound had been real, slow, deliberate, like boots scuffing against the floor. Then the mirror above the sink in break room 3 began to buzz on camera. I stared at it, willing myself not to look directly. Rule 6. Do not look into the mirror above the sink in break room 3. But something was wrong. My reflection wasn't matching my movements. On the screen, I saw myself slowly stand, even though I was already on my feet. The version of me on the monitor walked forward, toward the mirror. I did not move, but it did. And then it smiled. I shut the screen off. Hard. The room went quiet again. Nothing but the sound of my ragged breathing and the soft, ever-present hum of the building. I backed away from the desk, sat down on the floor and just stared at the wall until my hands stopped shaking. I didn't turn the monitors back on for the rest of the night. When dawn came, I stood up on legs that barely held me. The lights stopped humming. The pressure lifted, and I left. I didn't even look in the mirror when I got home. I slept all day. When I woke up, I didn't eat, I didn't speak, I just stared at my phone, waiting for the moment I would call and quit. But I didn't. Because that night, something in me whispered that the worst hadn't come yet. And if I walked away now, I might take it with me. I showed up the third night wearing 2 jackets and a layer of silence. I didn't speak to the security guard at the gate. I didn't wave at the cleaning crew pulling out of the lot. I just parked in the same crooked space, stared at the building, and reminded myself out loud that I still existed. By now, the rules weren't just posted on the wall, they were in my bones. I could recite them by memory, even the ones I tried hardest to forget, especially those. I told myself I'd only stay for 2 hours, long enough to punch in, check the monitors, and pretend everything was normal. Then I'd fake a phone call, say there was an emergency, and leave. But deep down, I knew I wouldn't. Not because I was brave, because I was afraid of what might happen if I broke the pattern. Because every night felt like it mattered more than the last. Everything was quiet when I entered the building. That strange, charged kind of quiet that feels like a warning. The air was thicker than usual, like walking through invisible webs. The lights above the main corridor flickered as I passed beneath them, and I didn't flinch. I didn't look back. I just kept walking until I reached the control room and locked the door behind me. For the first 40 minutes, nothing happened. No static, no figures, no voices. And then the alarms went off. Not just one, all of them. Every screen flooded red at once, something I'd never seen before. The buzzers screeched in unison, flashing alerts I wasn't trained to handle. Breach Zone 2. Motion detected in Archive Hall. Door override failed. My first instinct was to run. My second was to check the rules. But there was no rule for this. I tried to power down the alarms, but the system was locked. Every key press returned an error message, and the more I pressed, the louder everything seemed to get. And then, just as suddenly, it all stopped. Silence. Not even the hum of electricity. The monitors went black. For a long moment, I thought maybe the power had failed, but the lights were still on, faintly, buzzing. That's when I saw it. On the wall above the desk, right next to the list of rules. A new line had appeared. A new rule. Handwritten. Rule 8. If a new rule appears, obey it immediately. I felt my stomach tighten. I hadn't written that. No one had. I blinked, looked again. Now there were 2 new lines. Rule 9. Do not acknowledge any additional rules out loud. I took a step back. I don't know why that one got to me, but it did. Like something had been listening the entire time, waiting to hear me say one of them aloud. I covered my mouth and backed toward the door. That's when the lights cut out completely. The room was bathed in pitch black, save for one thing, the monitor for camera 13. It turned itself on. That camera pointed at a hallway that, according to the map, hadn't been in use in decades. It was part of the original build before the place expanded, a section that had supposedly been sealed. But now on the screen, it flickered to life. I saw a hallway. I saw a door. I saw something crawling out of it. I don't mean crawling like a person on hands and knees. I mean something too long, too segmented, too wrong to belong to anybody I'd ever seen. It moved with the sound of tearing cloth and wet suction, dragging itself across the old tile with deliberate intent. Not fast, not slow, just with purpose. And then it paused, turned toward the camera, and smiled. It didn't have a face, but I knew it was smiling. I slammed the monitor off and backed away from the desk. But there was another sound now, behind me. Not footsteps this time. Breathing. Not the kind you hear when someone's anxious or scared. The kind you feel, wet and hot on the back of your neck. I didn't turn around. Rule 1. Never turn around if you feel breath on your neck between 2 and 3 a.m. I checked the time. It was 2:07. I closed my eyes and focused on the rhythm of my own lungs. In, out, trying not to match the other rhythm. The slower one, the closer one. It stayed behind me for 7 minutes. Then it was gone. I didn't sleep the next day. I didn't eat. I sat on the floor of my apartment with the TV on full volume, just to drown out the silence. But nothing came for me. Not yet. I thought about quitting again, but that was the thing I realized. I didn't know if I could, because after that night, I wasn't sure the job had ever been a choice. By the 4th night, I wasn't checking the time anymore. I felt it. It wasn't a shift now, it was a cycle, something ancient and repeating. I didn't arrive at work. I was pulled there like my body knew what would happen if I stayed home. I parked. I walked. I entered through the side door, not because I wanted to avoid the front, but because the front no longer made sense to me. It felt watched. The control room smelled like old wires and wet paper. I don't know if that was new or if I'd just started noticing. The list of rules was still on the wall, but so were more additions. Not typed, not printed, just there, each one slightly different in handwriting, like whoever wrote them wasn't always the same person or thing. Rule 10. Do not acknowledge your reflection if it moves differently than you. Rule 11. If the emergency lights flash 3 times, lie down. Do not get up until they stop. Rule 12. At 3:33 a.m. the phone will ring. Do not answer on the first call. Answer only on the second. The worst part? My name was written on the bottom of the page now. It wasn't there before. It didn't say employee. It said, for my name only. I didn't want to know how it knew, or why it was speaking to me directly now. I sat down, heart rattling in my ribs like a moth behind glass, and stared at the monitors. At first, nothing moved. Then the static started. Camera 6 again. That hallway, that door, and the thing crawling out from underneath it. Only this time, it wasn't the same one. This one had legs, tall, angular, like a shadow, trying to remember what bones were. It walked upright, but its movements glitched, jerky, like bad footage. It dragged something behind it. I thought it was a coat. It wasn't. It was skin. Human, I think. Pale. Empty. It walked straight past the camera and out of frame, toward the control room. I stood up, locked the door, checked it 3 times. Then the lights blinked. Once, twice, 3 times. Rule 11. Lie down. Don't get up. I dropped, forehead pressing against the cold linoleum floor, heart pounding so hard I thought it would crack my ribs. Something brushed against the door. Then it scratched. It didn't knock. It scraped. Soft at first, then more violently, like claws dragging across the metal. I stayed down. I don't know how long. Could have been 5 minutes, could have been 30. Then, silence. The lights came back. I stood. My legs were jelly. I checked the monitors. It was gone. But something new had appeared. A second list. Not on the wall. On the floor, in chalk. Rules I hadn't seen before. Numbers scratched in slanted handwriting. 13. When you begin to forget why you're here, leave the note in your back pocket. 14. If the break room clock reads 4:04, cover your ears and hum. Don't listen. I checked my pocket. There was a note there. I swear to God I hadn't put it in. I unfolded it, hands shaking. It was short. You're not being paid in money. You're being paid in time. I read it 3 times, and the more I read it, the less I understood it. My thoughts felt fuzzy, like I was forgetting something, someone. I sat down again, trying to anchor myself. But every time I blinked, the rules on the wall looked different, rearranged, slightly off. And that's when I realized something horrible. I couldn't remember how long I had been working here. 3 nights? 5, 10? I checked my phone, dead. I checked the date on the terminal. It glitched, flashing nonsense. Symbols instead of numbers, like the system didn't want me to know, or couldn't. I tried to log into the HR portal just to find my schedule, a calendar, something. But there was no record of me, no employee file, no shift schedule, not even a login. I wasn't in the system, and yet I was still here, still working, still following the rules. I stood, grabbed my keys, and told myself, this is it. I'm leaving. I stormed down the hallway toward the side door, toward the lot, toward freedom, and then I saw it. The wall. Not the one by the control room, the other wall, the one near the exit. I don't know how I'd never noticed it before. It was covered in rules, hundreds of them, thousands, layered over each other. Different languages, different materials, chalk, ink, nail scratches, burn marks. And scrawled at the very bottom, written so faint I had to squint to see, once you know the rules, you can never unknow them. I backed away, slowly, turned. and went back to the control room. Because I understood what that meant. It wasn't just about breaking the rules. It was about belonging to them. I didn't sleep that day. I didn't eat, didn't shower, didn't speak to anyone, because I couldn't remember who to speak to. That's what scared me the most. Not the things I'd seen, not even the rules themselves. It was the holes, the gaps in my memory that were growing wider. My apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. My fridge had food I didn't remember buying. My phone had missed calls from names I didn't recognize. No voicemails, just names. Some of them weren't even names, just a string of numbers, or single words. One just said, "Stop." That night, I went in early. I don't know why. I think I was afraid if I waited, the building might come get me itself. It didn't need permission anymore. I was already its employee, its guest, its prisoner. The time card was gone. The clock on the wall read. That's not a formatting error. That's exactly how it looked. Time didn't mean anything here now. When I walked past the rule wall, I noticed something terrifying. The original 7 rules were gone, covered, buried under layers and layers of new ones. I tried peeling one back, but the paper dissolved in my fingers. It was like the rules were alive now, breathing, multiplying. Something else changed too. The cameras no longer showed empty halls or glitched shadows. They showed me, sitting at the desk, looking into the monitor, and then I blinked. And in that instant, my double blinked too. But then it didn't stop. It kept blinking, like it was trying to communicate. I watched in frozen horror as it reached for a note that wasn't on my desk. Held it up. Black marker, big letters. Do not answer the phone. Just then, the phone beside me rang. I didn't move, not even to breathe. The ringing didn't stop. 7, 8, 9 times. Then it stopped. I turned back to the screen. The copy of me was gone. I wasn't on camera anymore. Nothing was. All feeds black, just a thin line of text scrolling across every monitor. The wall knows who listens. I didn't ask what it meant. I was too afraid I'd get an answer. Around 2:50 a.m., the power surged. Every light in the facility flickered. The emergency lights glowed dim red, casting the hallway in a low, bloody hue. The hum in the walls returned. But this time, I recognized it. It wasn't machinery. It was breathing. And it was close. I checked the back hallway. The door that was always locked, open now. Inside, a narrow stairwell that didn't exist on the blueprints. I checked the plans weeks ago when I first started. This stairwell wasn't on them, but now it was here, lit by a single bulb swinging at the top. And from below, a rhythmic thumping, like footsteps or a heartbeat. I backed away and closed the door, tried to forget it. But the wall had other plans. A new rule appeared, handwritten, still wet. 15. If the stairwell opens, leave it open. Never shut what wants to stay awake. I felt sick. Had I just broken Rule 15? The monitors flashed, every one of them. A dozen stairwells, some with shadows, some with nothing, some with things that were almost people. I couldn't look away. My skin itched like something was crawling under it. The room grew colder, the kind of cold that settles into your bones, not your skin. And then the lights went out entirely. Pitch black, no monitors, no hum, no static, just silence. And in that silence, a whisper, not behind me,
Not around me, inside me. Do you want to leave? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat had closed. The whisper came again. Then write a rule. I fumbled blindly for a pen, a piece of paper. My hands were numb. I scrawled the first thing that came to mind. Rule 16. Never believe you're the first one here. The lights came back, so did the power. The cameras showed the normal empty holes again, but the wall had changed. My rule was there now, typed, numbered, permanent, and below it, a new one. 17. Every rule has a cost. I didn't know what I'd just done, I still don't. But I know the whisper hasn't left. It's quieter now, but it's in me. Watching, waiting, and the worst part? I think I believe it, because I didn't write that rule alone. It wrote it through me. It's strange what you get used to. When I first started here, the rules were a warning. Now they feel like prayers.
Little talismans tacked to the wall, each one bleeding with the memory of someone who broke it. I don't know how many rules are up there now, 40, 50? They change too fast to count. Some disappear, some rewrite themselves, and some seem to know what I'm thinking before I do. Last night, Rule 19 appeared before I even sat down. Do not pity the man in the mirror. He's the one who stayed too long. I didn't want to know what that meant, but I looked anyway. There's a small mirror nailed to the corner beam behind the reception desk. I've passed it 100 times and never thought twice, but now, in the grey fluorescent buzz of 3:17 a.m., it felt like it was pulsing, and in it, I didn't see myself. I saw the man I replaced. He was wearing my uniform, sitting at my desk, but older, weathered, like he'd been here for decades. He wasn't blinking, he wasn't breathing. He just stared through the mirror, unmoving, his lips curled into the faintest, most exhausted smile I've ever seen. And then, without moving his mouth, he whispered, "You're already me." I threw the mirror across the room. It didn't break. It didn't even fall. It was still hanging. Same spot, unmoved. I couldn't breathe for a full minute. That was when I decided I had to try something. Not escape. Not yet. That would be suicide. But I could test the rules, just once. One small violation, just to see what was myth and what was whatever this was. I chose Rule 21. Do not speak during the storm. That one had always confused me. There were no storms underground, no windows, no weather. But as if the building heard my thoughts, a low rumble started from deep within the walls. And then, the power flickered. The floor shook. Dust spilled from the ceiling tiles, and something howled. Not wind, not thunder. Something alive. I stood and whispered, "What storm?" And every light died. The walls groaned, and a voice, not a whisper this time, not a thought, boomed from the ventilation shaft above me. "You." That was it. Just that one word. But it hit me like a truck. I dropped to my knees. My eardrums screamed. My nose bled, my fingers went numb. And when the lights came back, the wall had changed again. All the rules were gone. Just one remained, centered, bold, burned into the surface like it had been branded by fire. You don't make the rules. You survive them. That was my warning, my one and only. Because now I'm not alone in here. Something has started following me. I hear its steps when I move from the desk to the supply closet. I feel its breath in the elevator when the doors close too slow. I see its outline, just barely, in the grain of the concrete, in the static of the cameras. And last night, it left me something. A drawing, crude, childlike, a picture of a man in a chair. Me, surrounded by tall, faceless figures holding signs. Each one had a rule, except one. The figure standing behind me. Its sign said nothing, but the paper was still wet when I touched it. Not with ink, with blood. It ends with silence. That's how you know something's coming. Not noise, silence. The kind that presses on your lungs, makes your heartbeat sound like a drum in a canyon. That's what I walked into last night at 2:59 a.m. A silence so heavy I thought my ears had gone out, but I could still hear my breathing, and one other sound. Clicking. Not mechanical, not digital. Organic. Like teeth tapping or fingers drumming bone. It came from somewhere past the boiler room, a part of the basement I've never gone into. The door was always locked, sealed shut behind rusted hinges, and a sign I'd never paid attention to until last night. The sign was gone. The door was open, and the clicking was getting closer. I should have called the manager, but we both know that doesn't work. I tried once, weeks ago. All I got was a voicemail recording that sounded like it was recorded underwater, and halfway through it, a voice, not his, whispered, "Don't involve outsiders. This is your weight to carry." So I went in alone. Flashlight, utility knife, a keycard that did nothing. I didn't expect to make it back. I just needed answers. I needed to know what was behind all these rules. Who made them? Why? And what would happen when I broke the one I swore I never would? The first rule. Never go beyond the final hallway. The one past the furnace room. The one behind the locked steel door with no handle. It was open now. And behind it was not a hallway. It was a void. No floor, no walls. Just blackness. And hovering in it, yes, hovering, was a room. Flickering fluorescent lights, a metal chair, and someone in it. I knew that room. It was this room. Reception, but older, corroded, burned, as if decades had passed inside it while the rest of the world moved forward. And the man in the chair was me. Pale, rigid, eyes open but unmoving, dead but watching. I took a step back, but the floor didn't hold. I fell. I didn't hit ground, I didn't stop. I shifted. It's the only word I have. And when I opened my eyes, I was sitting back at the reception desk. Same chair, same flickering ceiling light. But everything had changed. The walls weren't concrete anymore. They were wood. Old wood. Rotted. Like the place had been here a century longer than I remembered. And on the wall in front of me, carved, not printed, carved, was a new rule. You are now the rule maker. Begin. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I waited to wake up. But time didn't pass. The clock on the wall hadn't ticked in minutes, or hours, or days. I reached for the emergency phone. It wasn't there, none of the switches worked. The vents had gone silent, and the walls, they started writing themselves. Words scraped themselves into the surface, letter by letter, like nails gouging flesh. Rule 1. Do not listen when the walls begin to whisper. They only want your name. Rule 2. When the door disappears, don't look for it. You've already passed through. Rule 3. There is no shift change. You are the last. I wanted to scream, but I knew if I did it would write another. Rule 4. Do not scream. So I stayed still. I waited. And now, I wait still. If you're hearing this, then somehow someone made it out. Maybe you. Maybe someone before me. Maybe someone braver. But I'm here now. Part of it. And if you ever take this job, if you ever walk into this building and see a wall with no rules posted, run. Because that means it's waiting for you to write them. And when you do, it knows your name and it never forgets.